Here we go. Caesar's Civil War, Chapter 7. Quibus rebus cognitus. So we're starting off from the ablative absolute. With these things known, Caesar, a nominative, apud milites. Apud's the preposition. So he was with his soldiers, or Caesar with his soldiers coniant, or held an assembly. So he understood these things going on, and he got together and held an assembly with his soldiers. Omnium, of all, temporum, of all the times, injurious, these are the injuries or things that are done that annoy you, inimicorum, of the enemies, in se, which means towards himself, because it's in with the accusative, actually probably in with an ablative, commemorate. So this is Caesar holding an assembly. He commemorates all the times that there was all this bad things done towards him by his enemies. A quibus, from those deductum, led away, and depravatum, these are an accusative, and Pompeii is in the accusative. So, in apposition, you could say, well, here's the verb queritur. So Caesar was complaining that these people were led away by Pompey in his depravity, basically. Invidia, this is his hostility, envy, hatred, and objectionem, this is like speaking bitterly against him or speaking reproaches against him. Laudas suas. So he led people away from his own praise, with Pompey did, with hatred and reproaches. Quis ipsi, of whom himself, honora indignitati, these are like datives, always favourite. So he had always favourite, which means supported, the dative, and there's the enclitic adjuditor fuerit. So he had always been in support of Pompey's honour and dignitas, and he'd always helped him. But Pompey, on the other hand, he led people away from praise of Caesar. Novum, it's accusative for new, in republic. Novum introductum, these are accusative exemplum, accusative querenta. So Caesar's taking the place of the nominative in this verb. So he was complaining, querita, that a new examples had been past passive, introduced into the Republica, so that the tribunica intercessios, this is basically making an adjective out of this, so that they go together. The tribunes vetu armis, with arms, notaritor, and opprimerator, which are imperfect subjunctives. So it means that the tribune's veto had been censured and crushed, opprimerator, with arms, quae, which superioribus ennis, which in the earlier years, armis, with arms, asset, that's a pluperfect, had been restituted. So in the earlier years, it had been restored with arms, and now it was being censured and crushed with arms. Sullaim, which is sulla in the accusative, nudata omnibus rebus, in all matters, tribunicia. So we'll have to take this here as looking as a nominative. So and that's past passive, or the adjective of it. So he's stripped the tribuneship of all in all matters, potestate, of power in all matters. Nevertheless, he had left the intercession, this veto, liberam, free. So Sulla, who had formerly been in power, he had stripped the tribunes of all their powers, but had left this veto. But here we see Pompey doesn't, Pompeium. So Pompeium, qui amissa restituisse videator, it's subjunctive. So Pompey, who seems to have restored amissa the things which were lost, dona even, which is this is the gifts that they had, even, etiam, which ante habuit. So the gifts even which they had before, adamisse, these had been driven off. So it seemed that he'd restored the things they lost, but even the things which they had before, he took away. And we'll have a daily dictionary word early, noto. First conjugation, mark, write, signify, denote, mark, note, observe, or censure, figuratively speaking. Quotiens cumque. Quotiens is whenever. So quotiens cumque basically is whenever it happens. So whenever sit, subjunctive decretum. So whenever there could be a decree, Tarrant opem magistratus, that these magistrates, people in their offices, should pay attention, give operam. Ne quid, lest anything, res publica detrimenti caperet. This is a repeating of a similar thing we saw before. The magistrate should pay attention lest that anything should happen which causes detriment to the republic. Qua voce, in which voce's wording, in which wording also at quo senatus consulta, we'll put the quo and consulta together. So by which consulto or decree or decision of the Senate, populus Romanus, we're looking here like this is nominative, ad arma sit vocatus. So vocatus would go with the populus Romanus as a passive participle. So whenever the Roman people may be called to arms. Factum, this is a deed or a fact, in perniciosis legibus, so in pernicious legislation, in vi tribunal, in the force tribunes, so when the tribunes are violent, in session, so when there's they go off to their own, populi, so when the people succeed, take a succession basically, when they take a bit of power for themselves. Templus locus qui etoribus occupatus. So we can take this in the succession of the people they will occupy, take to the, we'll take this as a dative, to the temples and the locus editoris. These are the high places. So basically, we go back to here, quadientque. So whenever there was a decree, the magistrates had to pay attention lest they didn't do anything which was called detriment to the public, in which in wording and by the decisions of the Senate, which would call the people, Roman people, to arms. It was a fact in these pernicious laws or legislations, and with the violent tribunes, that these people took a succession to themselves and they occupied the temples and the high places. At qui haec superioris aetatis. So in these things, exemplar, so you could say, in these examples, haec exemplar, of the earlier ages, aetatis, superius, expiata, this is like how you pay an expiation to the gods basically, Saturni and Graecorum Casibus docet. Docet's teaching or instructing, so he was teaching that these examples of the early things were the price to pay the expiation in Casibus, which is in happens by chance basically, or fate, when there was in chances of disasters to Saturni and of the Gracchi. Quarum rerum, double genitive, so of which circumstances or matter, illo tempori, in that time, nihil factum, nothing had been done, ne cogitatum quidem, so ne quidem, it was not even cogitatum, this was not even thought up in these disasters of the Gracchi, etc. Nulla lex promulgata, so no law had been promulgated or produced, proposed, non cum populo, this is a cum taking the ablative, age coeptum, so no assembly was driven or conducted, agi, with the people, nulla successione facta, there had been no secession taken place either. Hortator, he encouraged or urged, quis imperatus ductu 9 annus. So he'd been in charge, ductu, for 9 years. He'd been their imperator, so the general, and gesserant. Things had gone on felicissime, which is a superlative. Things had been happened most happily or blessedly, basically, or very, they'd gone well. Things in the Republic, had happened well, and plurum prolia, and there had been many battles. Fecerunt had been done secunda favourably. So, back to here, he had encouraged them, who he had led as the general for 13 years. Things had happened most felicitously, most happily and good, and they'd fought many battles successfully in Omnem, Gallium, and Germania, and all of Gaul and Germany, Pacificaverit, they had pacified. Ut, we'll take this as a so that, eos existimationem dignitatem qui ab inimicis defendere. Yeah, so that they would defend his estimation and his worth from his enemies. So this is his reputation and worthiness they should defend from his enemies. Conclamant, so shouted legionis, genitive, the 13 quae aderat, which were at hand, milites. So the soldiers, milites, conclamant, they shouted of the 13th legion, there's that genitive, who were at hand. Hanc enim, for hanc these, evocaverat, had been called initio tumultus, at the beginning of this tumult or emergency or tumultuous event. Relique non-dom conveniat. The rest had not yet non-dom convened here. Sese paratos esse. So they were prepared themselves, imperatos sui, which is theirs, and tribune of the plems, inuris defendere. So they were prepared to defend themselves and their general and their tribunes. You could probably make some fancy sort of thing out of it, but they wanted to protect their commander and tribunes from injury. Cognita voluntate, chapter 8. Having known the voluntate, the will, militum, of his soldiers, araminium, a proper noun in the accusative, so that means he's going there towards that place. Cum ea, with this legion, God, I'm terrible at saying these things, proficicitor, which means he set out. So he got to know the will of the soldiers, and he set out for Ariminium with this legion. Ibiqui, which means, and ibi there, tribunus plebis, the tribunes who ad eum profugerup, those who had fled to him, convenit, there he met with them, they convened with them. Reliquas legionaries, it's accusative plural. The rest of the legions, evocarat, so he's the nominative, he's calling the rest of his legions ex hibernis, which is their winter camp. So he called the rest of the legions from the winter camp at Ubet, and he ordered, Ubet takes a infinitive, so he ordered them to follow, subsequi. El Caesar adolescens, which means he's a young man. He venerated eo means there. So El Caesar, the young man, came there, quis, of whose, pater, father, Caesaris erat legatus. His father was a legate of Caesar, so he was like a deputy officer. Is, he demonstrative pronoun, confecto, having completed, reliquo sermo, these are ablative absolutes, so he, having completed the remaining sermon, his conversation, quis re causa, the cause, which is behind this genitive, the cause of this matter, venerate, which he had come for. So he'd come for this reason, and he finished this conversation which had brought him there. Haberese, he had for himself, a Pompeo, from Pompeii, ad eum, to him, which is not say, so this him is Caesar, provate officio mandata, so demonstrate. So he finished his conversation, which he had come there for, and he demonstrated or showed that he had a mandate from Pompeii, which was offici, was his duty, was to bring it ad eum to Caesar. So in this message we've got velle Pompeium, so Pompeian wanted, that's reported speech, or rather obliquia, say himself, purgatum, to be purged or purified or cleared, Caesari, the dative. So Pompey wanted himself to be purified or expunged to Caesar. Nay, yea, lest this thing, quae re republica causa, which, quae, for the sake, which is postposition to a genitive, for the sake of the republic, egerit, we had done. So he wanted to have himself cleared in the eyes of Caesar, that anything which he'd done for the sake of the Republic in suam contumeliam vertat, be turned into this accusative, into insults or disgrace for himself. Semper, always, the adverb say, himself, re publicae commoda. Commoda is the advantage. So he'd always consider the advantage of the Republic, privis necessitudinibus habere potiora. So this is a comparative. So he'd always put the things to the advantage of the Republic potiora rather than we have got the comparative with the ablative plural rather than using quam. So he put that ahead of his own private friendships, necessitudinibus. He always put the advantage, what advantage the Republic ahead of his own friendships. Caesarem quoque, so Caesar in the accusative, also pro sua dignitare debere. Caesar, for the sake of his own worthiness or dignity, he ought to, et studium and iracundium, this is zeal and anger, or an irritation, sua rea republica dimittere. So he ought to dismiss or cease having such a zeal and anger and fury for the Republic. Neque, neither addio is to such an extent, gravita, so not with such a serious irasci anger at his enemies, inimicus, ut. So addio ut means he had such serious hatred of his enemies. Again, this is all in the letter, so it's that's a passive infinitive. So that cum illis nocere se spirit, when he hoped to harm them, republica nociat. So it's a subjunctive there. So that he should not harm the Republic. So Caesar, thinking for his own worth, he ought to stop all this enthusiasm and anger for the sake of the Republic, and to not be so seriously angry at his enemies that in hoping to harm illus them, he should harm the Republic. Porca a few eus dem generis added. So he added a few of the same type of things, cum excusation Pompei conjuncta, joined with the excuse to Pompey. Okay, so there's a few things of that type added, which would excuse Pompey. Iadem fere, fere is the adverb, it's also fermi, you see, which means almost. And so iadem, the same, almost the same, atque and iusdem verbis, and in the same words. Praetor Roscius, here's our nominative. The Praetor Roscius done almost the same and with almost the same words. Agit had done the same. Agit means something he did. Cum Caesar, with Caesar. And sibi Pompeium commemorase demonstrate. So he pointed out, demonstrated that it should be remembered that these were basically the same words as Pompey had said. The end.